CRE Power Hour, everyone. My name is Lisa Marie Wand and my co-host Stephanie. She's not here today, but between the two of us, we've spent the last 2 decades growing and scaling our businesses. And together, we're bringing you a new space for you to learn alongside the best in real estate at CRE Power Hour. Today, our guest speaker is Lisa Thomas, and we're so excited to have her on the show. Hi there. We do have a live audience joining us today, and we welcome you to ask questions. Actually, we're going to be asking questions of Lisa today, so let's get right to it. Lisa, thanks for being on the show. How are you?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm great. That introduction was so inspiring. The music and the pictures, that was amazing.
We're setting the vibe for a really fun show today.
Yes.
And Lisa Thomas, let me give you just a little bit of information. She'll introduce herself. But Lisa is licensed as a broker in North Carolina and South Carolina, and she also holds the designation of a certified international property specialist. So she's an international commercial real estate broker as well. Lisa, welcome to the show, and we would love to hear this story about how you ended up in commercial real estate.
My father had a general contractor's license, and he also had a real estate license, and participated in both equally. And they drew the plans and built the house for the house I grew up in, which was very unique and unusual. And so I watched them through that process, which initially created my interest in real estate in general. And then eventually I started in residential, and I just became very intrigued with intricacies of commercial. So moved into commercial.
And so how long were you in the business before you moved over to we say moved over, I call it moving over to the dark side.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of like in Star Wars,
Yeah.
which is fun because we do have a lot of fun in commercial real estate. How long were you a realtor before you started focusing on commercial real estate?
I was licensed, actively licensed in residential for probably 10 years, but I was also I worked at Cisco Systems and did a bit of technology during that time as well. And I felt like I had systematically learned that I could. And there is a woman who owns a commercial real estate firm in Raleigh, North Carolina, where I live. And I just admired her so much and what they did, and followed and admired her and the whole company. And so I just called her one day and said, I really want to learn commercial. Would you have a cup of coffee with me? And she did. And I went to work for her and have worked off and on with and for her for many years. And that was.
So you talked about the fact that you decided you really wanted to focus in commercial real estate was because of the intricacies of the business. Could you talk about that a little bit more? Because it is a complicated
very
transaction and just the whole business, but give a little more detail to our listeners and our viewers about that.
One of the things that I have found when there are residential agents who ask me what's the biggest difference to me, one of the biggest differences is there's no emotion whatsoever. It's all mathematical. And so, people both sides put numbers on paper, and if the numbers work such that they can come together in their different, what they each conclusions, then you have a deal, and if it doesn't, you don't. and just the actual mathematics and emotionless aspect of it is kind of what attracted me. It either works or it doesn't, and that's kind of it. That's what attracted me.
Well, I know you. I've gotten to know you pretty well, and you're definitely not emotionless, and our clients aren't either. But I do understand it's more of a, if it's going to make me money, I'm going to do it. And if it's not going to make me money, I'm not going to do it. Right?
Right. And what's interesting to me, a big difference was that when that happens, when one party comes to one conclusion, another party comes to another conclusion, and it's just we're not going to be able to meet in the middle. Um, they're both understanding and no harm, no foul. It's just not going to work, and maybe our paths will cross again someday. And mathematically, we just didn't come to agreement, and I thought that was kind of interesting and an interesting difference.
And what tools do you see that are available now that weren't available before as far as commercial real estate?
In my opinion, one of the biggest things that is available now, that wasn't so much then, are the yous and me's of the industry, which is, I know you're an advisor and a broker in charge and amazing mentor. I wish I could talk to you every day, personally speaking. Um, uh, and when I started at all, except for the one woman that I called, and that's why I called her. She was the only female I knew in commercial real estate. And so I'm halfway joking, halfway serious when I say the yous and me's, which is people you can shadow, you can call, you can mentor, you can ask for advice and instruction. And then also there are schools, tools, training, such as EXP Commercial, where you and I both are, have the advisor program. There's the NCREA program. Mike Lipsy has a great training program, and then of course there's the CCIM, which is that's in my opinion one of the best training programs. Um, all of those were kind of felt kind of out of reach when there are more people, more tools, more avenues for learning and training than there were at the time, which is kind of great.
Yeah, that's true. And talk about so you have your certified international property specialist, and talk about that in relation to your commercial real estate business.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. So it's called a CIPS, and it's through the National Association of Realtors. I got involved at the state level, local associations. There's a national association, and what a lot of people may not realize is there are also state level associations. So I got involved with the state level association where I live in North Carolina, and because I had the CIPS, Certified International Property Specialist, I was able to participate as chairman of an international real estate committee locally, and now I'm on the state level board. And then through that, I've been invited to participate with the FIOBC organization, which is specifically international, on their commercial committee. And what's super exciting to me, international standpoint, with the internet specifically, the world is just our oyster. It's available to you. You can participate in as much anywhere you would like as a result of the internet and these organizations which bring us together. And primarily, I think that one of the biggest advantages to those certifications and those organizations are, first and foremost, the education, but then coupled with that is the networking. And when you have, affords you the opportunity to be a part of the organization, which then opens the door for you for that database. So if someone calls me and says, I would like to buy a home in Ireland, I would like to buy a home in Belize, I can find a resource for you and have you introduced to them within 24 hours at the most, because of the database and the contacts that those organizations afford you.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Lisa. Any CCIM event I've been to, any commercial conference or expo that I've gone to, whether I was speaking or not, the opportunity to connect with people and not only begin to create those personal relationships. But I was looking at some statistics the other day as far as successful commercial real estate agents and brokers.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say about 20% and maybe even a little more of our deals could be coming from other commercial real estate agents and brokers. And a lot of people overlook that, but I have that in my business as well, where we, yes, maybe we're competing against other firms, but we can also get more deals done together, and that's based on relationship. And I'm actually attending a CCIM class on Monday called Commercial Real Estate Negotiations, and I'm just as excited about all the other people that will be there in the live class, the in real life class, as I am the content. So I agree with you. And commercial real estate is a business of relationships. That's another thing that makes us stand apart from our residential counterparts, is that we truly get things done with the relationships with our clients and our referral partners and other agents and brokers. And I'm sure you would agree with that.
Absolutely. 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 And if you don't mind, if I add one more thing about the international component, is part of the training that you learn through the international certifications that you were asking me about is the communication that you were referring to, is how to better do that with people from other countries and other so for instance, the way people have disc profiles, different countries kind of have different
their cultural profile.
Yes.
Right? That's true. I never thought about that.
It's very fascinating the more you learn. In one instance, if you don't receive, so there's this funny little phrase they use about whether you receive a compliment or not means you did a good job, and then in another culture, whether you received a criticism or not would help you know if you did a good job or not. And it varies from culture to culture. So you learn when you're communicating with other people and other countries, kind of communicate better through this training. So it's pretty fascinating. I'd recommend it to anybody.
Do you speak any foreign languages, Lisa?
A little bit. I'm not confident, but I do. But I'm passionate about learning some more. Let's put it that way.
That would be a killer combination, to be multilingual and have your CIPS certification and to be a badass commercial broker like you are.
Oh, thank you. It's on my that circle board we talked about with the goals.
Oh yeah, yes. I was talking to Lisa a couple of weeks ago. We were just doing an impromptu coaching session and catching up, and I was talking to her about a great way to create a business plan on the fly, because I just did an offsite with my team yesterday to do purpose planning for 2023. But things shift and flow throughout the year, and we're always connecting with our plan. And so a great way that I like to put things down on paper so I can see them is to do a mind map. And Lisa knew exactly what I was talking about, but you can create a plan for a project or a deal or for your business pretty quickly using bubbles and lines as a mind map, right, Lisa?
Yeah, it's in my bubble. Getting better. There is a language I speak some of, but would like to be better. It's in my bubble.
Which language did you say you speak?
German, a little bit.
German. Can you drop some German on me?
Sprechen Sie Deutsch? Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So I know you and I had a conversation a couple weeks ago about those most recent sale that you did that got you some spotlight. You were featured in Success Magazine, and you've had some opportunities to do some professional speaking, and some other things have come up for you because of your years of service and also because of this recent deal. So would you walk our audience through what that deal was and what was unique about it, and just give us some detail?
Oh, thank you. It's such an interesting story. And one thing I'd like to start with is by saying there was a gentleman who owned a bar in this building. He was very young compared to me. He was very young and asked me to help represent him because he wanted to sell his bar and get out of his lease. And he hired me because he was afraid of his landlord, the owner of the building. And so initially I thought, okay, I'll be happy to talk to your landlord for you because you're afraid of him. And later I learned why he was afraid of him, and he should have been afraid. But anyway, that's another talk show. But much. I thought it was just basically doing a favor for someone, and then that led to me meeting the landlord. It led to me. It was a multi-tenant building, about the size of a city block here where I live, and it was right across the street from NC State University. It was a building that had a bowling alley in it, and everybody I talked to had a funny story from being in the bowling alley in that building in college. And I leased all the spaces first. There were restaurants, I leased to a Starbucks, some office space. And then after we had the building completely leased, I had been working with the landlord or the owner for, at least a year at that point, and I knew the building inside and out. And he said, and sell it. And I said, okay. So we did. And then the buyer came along who was unrepresented. And so I was able to represent both the buyer and the seller in the transaction, which was about $7 million when we listed it. And it was just a great opportunity for me. I learned a lot in the process, and I get a lot of questions about the dual agency piece.
Yeah, I actually was going to ask you about that. How did you navigate the dual agency or representing both parties, like you mentioned?
Well, interestingly, we do 8 hours of continuing education in North Carolina every year, and I just had 4 hours of the broker in charge yesterday. And we talked about it in the class because the woman teaching the class is one of my mentors and a real estate commissioner that I love and adore. And we talked about it in the class, and some of the things that helped pave the way were that when I initially filled out the listing agreement with the man who owned the owner, I had no idea. I didn't really think that anyone ever would come along to buy it that wouldn't be represented. And yet, thank goodness, I had the foresight to include that in the listing agreement, which is what would happen if a buyer came along who was unrepresented. What would my commission percentage be? And would he be agreeable to that? And so I had all that writing already in the listing agreement. And so therefore, then when the buyer came along, it was a conversation that we had already had, and we had already kind of hashed out. We had hashed out the details, listed the details in the listing agreement. So then at that point, I just had to make note the owner that the buyers have told me they are unrepresented. Are you agreeable to that? He said yes. We had put it in writing, had both parties sign. And so because I had addressed it beforehand, it pegged easier conversation when it actually happened. And then during the
let me ask you about, Lisa, let me ask you about that. In the Carolinas, is it already in your agreement about dual agency, or is it something you added in additional terms?
Both. I mean, there was a very basic mention in the standard form, and then I added some additional detail. And why I did that without knowing that was going to happen, I don't
The
know.
the commercial real estate
But,
angels were looking out for you, and you're a smart, savvy lady. So
yes.
there you go.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And then one of the things that I tell people during the actual minutia of the transaction, which took a long time, and we're talking about a year. I tell people, everyone's afraid to say I don't know when someone asks you a question, and I say, when you're in a dual agency situation, I think best friend is to say, let me find out and get back to you, because everything you say and everything you share has to be verifiable in a report, in a receipt, of some form that you can verify. And so in that regard, anything that was requested of me, I just got the report. I got the report, whether it's from the accountant or whether it's from the manufacturer or whether it was from, a warranty. And so in that regard, it took the challenge out of dual agency, because I didn't answer anything I didn't know. I just said, let me get that information and get it back to you. And so it worked out really well. And then also I had a buyer and a seller who were very savvy real estate people. And so that helps too, because we were all kind of speaking the same language.
That definitely helps to have experienced clients on both sides of the deal. We had a guest on a while back, Delee Becker, and I love what she said. And I don't know if I shared this with you the last time we spoke, Lisa, but she said, if my client's not willing to do what I tell them to do, then I don't want to work with them. And this can really come into play when you have a inexperienced buyer or seller, and they really do need to listen to you, because that's why they hired us, is to help them as commercial real estate professionals through the transaction. But she had a really clear boundary about it. It made me giggle, but at the same time, there's some wisdom there, that she said, if they're not willing to listen to what I have to say, and they're not willing to do what I tell them to do, then we're not a good fit. And I'm sure that everyone in this business who's been in it for a while has had a scenario where that doesn't happen, and then a transaction a lot of times doesn't complete when that's the case. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree wholeheartedly, and the longer I do it, the more I agree. And even yesterday in the CE class, the teacher, who's a mentor of mine, one example she gave was, every time someone asks you a question and you don't know the answer, is it something you're willing to bet your license on? Because every answer you give, as we talked about, needs to be verifiable, and therefore, don't guess. If you're guessing, you could guess your license away.
Oh, that's so true. That's so true.
So guess.
And there's a piece of that about being a good steward, and that we're always learning. And also part of it is about being humble, because we all love to have the answers and to be the source of information, right? And because there's so many facets to commercial real estate, it's not always good to open your mouth. One of the things I do is I will say, that's a very interesting question. And that just buys me some time to think and decide how I want to move forward, because it may not be something I can even get the answer to. They may have to talk with an attorney or a CPA or a contractor or whatever. So yeah, that's true. What else did you want to share about how you navigated that transaction? And do you want to share some highlights? Do you have some funny stories, good stories to tell?
Oh my gosh, lots of funny. One of which I know I shared a presentation with you that I did, where I often have people say to me that they think that commercial real estate is so glamorous, and it's all glamorous, long story short. And so I share with them photos of, grease traps being dug up out of the ground because, yes, there was one in place, but it didn't meet code, and it had to be expanded. So this huge hole in the ground with concrete everywhere and mud, and I'm like, not so glamorous. And when, as a condition of the sale, the HVAC unit had to be replaced in this building we've been speaking of, this transaction we've been speaking of, and it was a 10-ton unit that had to go across a city street. And according to the city, in order to cross a city street, it had to be done at 3 or 4 in the morning. And so guess who had to go and sit in the car when it was below 0 degrees outside and wait and let them in the building and spend all day waiting for them to
That was
put the new unit on.
You had to do that. They don't tell you that when you're
not
getting into commercial
glamorous.
real estate.
Not glamorous. I mean, so lots of funny stories. Yes, there are. And I like the one about, I like the story about how I met the owner was through the fellow that because to me, it's a reminder that every person you meet, every opportunity could lead to another opportunity, and they're all important. Every introduction and every opportunity is important. So I like that story too.
I like the fact that, because we're my co-host and I, we're commercial real estate badasses, and we like to have more badasses on the show like you, Lisa. And it's funny to me that your client who was leasing the space said, "I'm afraid of the landlord," and he picked you to go in there and communicate and negotiate with the landlord on his behalf. You look so sweet and darling, but there's a fierce negotiator in there, right?
I hesitate to say this because the man who owns that building, we are friends to this day. I texted with him yesterday, but he's not easy, and he'd be the first one to tell you he's not easy. And I had more than one person say to me, no one could have done that but you, because he's not easy to deal with. And he wasn't. I mean, there were days when he would send me an email that would be 6 rows of question marks, and that's it. No words, just 6 rows. And I'm supposed to know what that meant. And fortunately, we had a relationship where I usually knew what he wanted, and I could answer the question. But, thank you for saying that, because thank you. I mean, I had more than one person say, only you could have done that. So
sounds like your friend / client / landlord falls in the high D category on the disc profile.
I lost you a little bit there. I'm sorry.
Oh, I said, yeah, it must be the internet. I said, it sounds like your client / friend / landlord falls on the high D side of the disc personality.
Woo! Triple D.
Triple D.
I will say, though, he said the nicest thing, because I asked him, he said the nicest thing. I told him I was preparing a presentation about the transaction, and I said, from your perspective as the owner, seller, my initial client, is there anything you would say about the ethics of dual agency and me having represented both you and the buyer? Is there anything you would add? And he said the nicest thing, which was, he said, part of ethics, inherent to ethics, is being honest. And part of being honest is making an honest effort. And he said, even though we're in different states and I wasn't there to oversee you every day, I had full confidence that you were making an honest effort, which means doing what you need to do, conducting the efforts that need to be made to make this happen. And he said he had full confidence in me, in that I was doing that, and that part of being ethics is honest effort. And I said, that is about the nicest thing you could have said. So I appreciated that.
Yeah, that is a wonderful compliment from your client, and I'm sure something that will continue to guide you as you move forward. As we're wrapping up today, Lisa, and thank you so much for being my guest today. Is there, something that you've learned that has really stuck with you that you could share with our audience? And we have an audience of people that are new in commercial real estate or on the periphery, and some that are, very successful. Is there something that you've learned that you could share that could help other people in this business?
I haven't thought about that in just that way, and so I'm answering this on the fly, so to speak. But
well, it's supposed to be.
yeah. It worked. You did it. So one thing I would say is take the long view. So what I mean by that is things are going to happen on a day-to-day basis that are opportunities, and trip you up, and just keep the long goal and the long perspective in mind, and work through those challenges on a day-to-day basis, and eventually you will get to the end successfully. And then also just don't quit and don't give up. I mean, I have people who they want to learn commercial real estate, and they're so worried about, what do I say when I get on the phone with this person? What give me the list of questions I should ask them. And don't be so afraid. Don't be too afraid. Just have the conversation, get your foot in the door, start the conversation, and let it unfold. And don't be so afraid of having every answer and every question beforehand, because you'll learn it as you go. I learned a lot through that I say learning commercial real estate is like learning the Bible. The more you read it, the more you realize there's more to learn. So yeah. So just jump in. And don't be afraid, I would say.
Yeah, that's true. I heard a statistic today. I was in a commercial broker meeting this morning, and one of the other brokers found this. It said out of the 1.4 million approximate real estate agents we have in the U.S., and that includes commercial, 800,000 have not closed a deal this year.
Wow.
So that's more than half. Mm-hmm. And what I tell the commercial real estate agents across the U.S. that I mentor is, if you're not in real estate, you can't do real estate. In other words, right. Don't quit. Because if you're not in the game, you can't play. And so even for those people that aren't, haven't transacted a lot of real estate, mm-hmm. I would say you're just not leaning into those high payoff activities. And one of those happens to be picking up the phone mm-hmm. and talking mm-hmm. to people, even when you're not sure what to say and you don't know who they are. So I agree with you I would say, you said, don't be scared. I would say, be brave, be fierce, and go out there and make yourself a successful commercial real estate broker. Mm-hmm. And what we do in this business funds an amazing life for us and allows us to have freedom and enjoy the fruits of our labor. And even in a shifting market like right now, there's so much opportunity. So I agree with you, Lisa. Thank you for that. Those pearls of wisdom. And I think you're wearing pearls today, so that's perfect. Lisa Thomas, we've shared your contact information too. And thank you so much for being here today. Thank you to our live listeners, and also to people that'll be listening to this on our podcast or on social media later on. And CRE Power Hour, we are every second and fourth Wednesday of each and every month at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And we're here to have unplugged and unique conversations about the business of commercial real estate and how to be successful. Thanks for being a wonderful guest today, Ms. Lisa Thomas, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for having me. Thanks, everyone.